Hi everyone, Stepan here. I'm going to show you round 3 from Versar. And again, sorry for the break, I just came home from a tournament which I didn't even finish. I'm sad and slightly embarrassed to say because it didn't go well. I'm going to get to the tournament as soon as I finish this one, but lately, as you may have noticed, I haven't been happy with my play and with my results. So yeah, that's it. I mean, I'm going to highlight my mistakes. I'm going to try and focus on fixing them. And there is one mistake that you're going to see throughout the games, and that's missing tactical patterns, which I don't think I should be missing, and I don't think the issue is chess related at all. I think it has to be psychological, because the things I've missed, if you put them all together, all of my mistakes in the last 20 games or so, that makes no sense. So I will get to that. But in any case, after playing a Grandmaster in round 2 of Versar, I faced a lower-rated opponent than me, and I had the black pieces. He started with pawn to b4. Now, I've never faced pawn to b4, I have to be honest. It's called the Polish opening, but it's not so bad. It's, I mean, black should immediately be slightly better, but the idea behind this is that you want to play in a sort of Nimzo-Larsen fashion, but instead of playing b3, you've played b4. And it's a weakness which can be attacked with a5 later on, but as my opponent did, you can push with b5, or you can simply reinforce it with a3, and then exchanges happen along the a file. So it's not that bad. I played my normal setup, which I would play against b3, because I think it's the best setup. I don't see a huge difference with the pawn on b4, so bishop b2, knight f6, and this is actually the most popular way to play, I think. If I turn on the book, no, actually e5 is more popular, which is the most common move against b3 as well, so you're basically just blocking this diagonal. But okay, d5, bishop b2, knight f6, e3, bishop f5, knight f3, e6. This is all very standard, I think. If people play b3, if the pawn was on b3, there are thousands of games, I think, or 1,000 games from this position. And now my opponent plays b5, which surprised me slightly. I was expecting a normal developing move, or excuse me, yeah, the pawn has to be defended, so I was expecting a3 and then some normal developing moves, but b5 is okay. White could also play c4, and now I think bishop b4 isn't such a good idea. I think c6 is better, just supporting my center. If bishop takes b4, then queen a4, and then I have to play knight c6, and then maybe knight d4. I don't know what's going on here. This seems bad. I probably have to play rook b8 or something, and then if takes, then at least my bishop is defended. But white could also take on f5. So if a3, if not a3, if c4, I was going to just support my center. But yeah, he played b5, which is okay. I played bishop e7, bishop e2, h6. I don't want to allow any knight h4 or knight d4 ideas, castles, castles, and here there's one game in the database played between a couple of 2300 players, and it went c4. My opponent played d3, which again is not bad, preparing c4, I guess, in some positions. Okay, finally a6, I have to attack that pawn. a4, of course, he doesn't want to take. If white takes, then black is definitely better with an active rook and an isolated pawn on a2. So a4 takes. I have to exchange rooks, takes. And now it was possible to play c6 straight away and trade off these pawns. That's fine. I could have also played queen to d7, and after something like knight to d4, bishop h7, c4, supporting this pawn. I think this should be equal. But I played knight bd7. I wanted to keep some more tension. Knight bd2, and now the idea was knight c5. I wanted to prevent c4, And I also wanted to develop my pieces and trade off his, in my opinion, only good piece, the bishop on a1. So I wanted to play knight fd7 and bishop f6, which in hindsight isn't such a good idea. I mean, it's not bad for black or anything, but it doesn't give me an advantage. And my opponent played a good move. He played queen to b1, which makes a lot of sense. Supports the d3 pawn, so if he wishes to do so, he could play c4 now. But it also develops his rook, sort of. The rook should be either here or here. Okay, I played knight f to d7, following through with my plan. Knight to d4, which... I mean, later on he played knight to b3, so he wanted to trade off some pieces. But I don't think... I don't think this is a good idea, especially how it turned up in the game. I think maybe rook c1 or rook to d1, just normal moves, and actually trading off this bishop and trying to occupy the a file were a better idea. But okay, knight d4, bishop g6. I don't have to play bishop h7. This way I have luft. And f4. And this may seem slightly scary, but it's not really scary. He isn't threatening anything. Worst case, I can trade off pieces. But I played bishop to f6, and now f5 doesn't really do anything. I don't think there's a threat here. I can just take, and if knight takes, there's a weakness here, which I will be exploiting for the rest of the game until I win it. I don't think long term there's a way to defend this, especially with my pawn on d5 and knight on c5. So he played knight to b3. I didn't see any reason to initiate the trade first. If he wants, he can improve my d7 knight. So I played rook e8. This definitely prevents f5 now if takes. Well, actually he cannot take anymore. There's no knight on d4. Yeah, in this position, if my rook was on e8, I would be winning. So after rook e8 here, I don't think he can ever play f5. Okay, and here he surprised me. He continued with bishop to d4. Now I played bishop f6 to trade off those bishops, but bishop d4 offers me such an easy trade with a better position, actually not even equal. He should have just played bishop f6, and after queen f6 I would like to have black, but I don't think I'm much better. But in this position I can just take on b3, and now if queen b3, as happened in the game, I can take on d4 and ruin his pawn structure. And if knight b3, which he probably expected he could do, then e5, and after fe5 I can just play bishop e5. And if he takes, my pieces are coming in. Eventually I think he's just going to lose material, or actually he might be immediately losing material after rook f3. I don't know. I can just go bishop h5, so that doesn't work. And if queen c1, I can just go queen e8. So I think he's just losing material. So after knight b3, he played queen b3, and I played bishop d4. And here I have a pleasant advantage. Black should be not -1, but almost -1 in this position. I think black is significantly better. After ed4, excuse me. But I played a move which gives up almost my entire advantage here, and there's a very interesting strategic plan in this position, and if you want you can try to find it. It's a very interesting idea, not that hard to see. I didn't see it because I wasn't looking for it. I thought, okay, this is a winning endgame, and I just played on, which is stupid way to play chess, and what I've been doing a lot lately. I don't know why. It's not on purpose, and as you're going to see, I made several mistakes in this game. Okay, the first one is I played pawn to c6, but knight b6 is very interesting, and the idea is not to keep this knight on b6, it's to transfer it to d6. For example, well, if the rook moves, I'm threatening queen f6. So let's say g3. And now knight c8, let's say rook a1. And now let's say knight d6. Okay? If b6, I can just take that, it's a free pawn. If not b6, then actually playing with b7 is very interesting. And what's he going to do? Play rook a1? Or rook b1? I don't know. And if you can imagine, let's say white does nothing. And let's say he somehow manages to defend this. I don't know. Eventually, I'm going to win this pawn. I don't think there's an easy way for him to include his pieces in the game, because the knight on d6 is definitely working against c4, and I also don't have to take it. And if he does play it and tries to shuffle the bishop around here, I think that's quite too slow. But in the game, I played c6, and now the game should be equal again after bc, bc. I simply don't have a weakness to target. I thought that the pawn on d4 is going to be enough, but it's definitely not enough, especially given the fact that he has the c5 square, and there's nothing I can do about it. So queen c7, knight b3, and definitely, okay, if anybody is better, it should be black, but it's nothing significant. Queen d2, queen b6, trying to infiltrate some more. Queen e3. Now this should be a mistake because it allows rook a2, and here I was happy. So now I should be slightly better again after bishop to d1. Of course, he cannot play g4 straight away, which he would like to play with the threat of f5, sort of trapping my bishop on h7, because he loses this pawn. But after bishop to d1, he is threatening g4, so I played h5. He played h3, trying to play g4, and I played h4. And this I knew was kind of risky, but with a weakness here, my queen able to come to d8, and the weakness on c2, I was happy. And also some pins here, so if, for example, queen f2, I can just take on d3. So he played rook f2. I played knight f6, he played bishop to g4, trying to play f5, and I played queen d8. Queen d8 is a passive beginner's move. It's a very bad move. The idea behind this is, well, I want to be able to support this pawn, and in many positions after ef5, not allow any checks, or queen e7, and stuff like that, but that's just weak. If you're not lazy during the game, like I was, because queen d8 is a very lazy move, well, queen b4 is an alternative, which shows that you're paying attention. Queen b4 is a very strong move. The idea is just queen to c3. And if he defends passively, then, I don't know, queen d2 is impossible because I can just take on d4. So is queen e1. So there's no easy way to evict my queen. So if, for example, king h2 or something like that, then I can just go here. And now it's not easy to defend at all. Now it's very hard to defend. But I played queen d8, which is bad. Queen e5, of course, using the fact that I vacated some squares. Queen b6. f5, finally takes, bishop takes, queen takes, and queen to c7. And here I was happy again when he played his next move. But if he doesn't play his next move, I think, even though I have two weaknesses to target, and he has one and one very good square, I think it's objectively very close to equal. But he played queen e5, and after queen e5, I think black should win this with perfect play. Even though the advantage is very, very slight, I have so much space, and I basically have an extra pawn over here because my h pawn is blocking his h and g pawns, and he doesn't have an extra pawn on the queen side. So I'm basically a pawn up. So after takes, knight h5, especially with this great square on g3, I think a grandmaster would win this 9 out of 10 times against another grandmaster. Of course, he cannot play rook f5 here because after knight g3 and rook f4 trying to win the pawn, I can just fork the king and rook. So he played king f1, and also if he plays something horrendous like king h2, then knight g3, ideas with mates like this, and of course if rook f4 here, I can just play g5. Well, that would have to be prepared, but okay, you get the idea. So he played king f1. I played g5, now preventing rook f4. If he plays rook f5 here, I was going to play knight to g3 and trying to get an active position. So I think, well, let's say, okay, if the king goes to the second rank, I can just take on c2. So maybe something like this. Not going back, of course. So takes, king to f8. I mean, I'm going to take on g2, and I think this should be winning. Now, I wasn't able to calculate everything during the game, but I just thought, okay, after g5, rook f5 cannot work. He played king e1, which is better. And after knight f4, I was absolutely certain that this position was winning for black. My knight is just dominating his entire position. This is weak, this is weak. My king is coming in. And if I can get my king here, I'm just going to start winning material. King d2 played, knight e6, improving my knight some more. c5, gaining space, rook d2, rook a3. Sort of a cheap trick, but okay, I want to play c4 in some positions. Okay, rook to d1, king to g7, and now rook a1. And this is definitely losing. I remember he was looking very happy when he played rook a1, but it's a completely losing position for white now, because I can just take, play king g6, and whatever he does, I play knight to f4, and it's just game over. He played knight b3, and now it's black to play and win. Hopefully you can find the win. There are two ways to win, so just play one of them. The easiest one is knight takes d3, and after king takes d3 you just go c4 check. This is basically forced, unless on knight takes d3 he doesn't do anything, which is hard to do because you're gonna take on e5. Okay, so if c4 here, king c2 takes, and obviously this is a winning king and pawn endgame. No need to analyze. The other way to play is knight takes g2, and after king to f3, for example, then knight e1 check, and after king anywhere, you just take, and again the same thing, you're just up a pawn. In the game, I played knight takes g2, and after king f3, I didn't see this idea, which is just dreadful. I played c4, which seemed winning to me during the game. It is winning, don't get me wrong, but it's not as winning as knight e1. Knight e1 is just winning on the spot. And when I was looking at this game with Ozren, my coach, he just said, I think he said, in this position, what about knight d3? And I said, oh yeah, that's winning. And he said, yeah, it is. And that was the analysis. And I didn't even see it during the game. And I had half an hour on the clock. If someone told me black to play and win, I would have found both knight g2 and knight d3 with all the follow-ups. I just didn't do it, and I don't know why. And that's something I have to figure out until my next tournament. In any case, I played c4, which is not bad. It still wins, but it doesn't win in one move. Takes, knight d2, and knight f4. And after knight takes c4, here was my analysis of knight h3, which I didn't play in the end. King to g4, and I thought, oh, okay, he gains the tempo. This doesn't seem good. And I thought knight f2. My analysis was king f5. Again, I don't know how to explain that. So in the game, I played king f5. And I was going to take on h3 later. It's not as if he can prevent it. But the problem is knight d6, and after king e5, knight f7. And I have to go back somewhere. I went to f6. And now it's a draw. I traded one pawn too many. After knight d6, knight h3, this is a drawn position. And I mean, excuses in chess are a stupid thing. I mean, there are no viable excuses for drawing a winning game or losing a drawn game or whatever. It's just you weren't good enough. I wasn't good enough. I played poorly. I made several dreadful mistakes. I mean, in this position, not playing knight e1, I think every 13, 14, 1500 player should play that in 1 minute. I mean, there's no excuse for this. I just wasn't good enough, and that's it. And then this position, thinking that his king could go to f5, that's even worse. I mean, you take the pawn, and of course, after this and this, the king has to go back to f3. You just play knight d1, and you just win. That's it. There's no more analysis. You take this pawn and you win. Of course, with an extra pawn on the board, this can never be a draw. For example, I don't even know what to play for white. Here. That's it, end of analysis. So yeah, I have to say I did not deserve to win this game. Had I won it somehow in the end, I don't think it would have been as instructive. Of course, I cannot say the mistakes made were something you can analyze and say, oh, you should have done this and this and this. I think they were psychological, except for one bad positional mistake which I made, or strategic, and that's in this position I played c6. Now that's just bad. That I have to learn from, definitely. This plan with knight b6, knight c8, knight d6, I should have seen. But every other mistake I think was just psychological. So I will be, and I am, and have been working on that. See you tomorrow for the next game, which was better, I have to say. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.